Hello and welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. I'm Julie Hartman. It is Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. It is great as always to be with you, as it is to be with Sean McConnell in the producer's dungeon. Hello, Seanzy. Welcome to Timeless. What's up? That is quite a question. I'll tell you what's up, but first I'm going to give everybody the call-in number, 844-861-5537, 844-861-5537 is the call-in number if you'd like to talk with me. And of course, as always, you can use the chat. I've got a direct line right here to the chat, and I'll be monitoring your lovely pearls of wisdom that people inevitably drop in the Timeless chat. I'm cackling because Sean just asked me what's up. And, you know, I rarely talk about myself on this show. I actually make a very concerted effort not to do that because I feel like people in my generation have a reputation for making everything about themselves. And when I started this show, I told myself I wasn't going to fall into the category of one of those influencers who gets in front of the camera and talks all about their dog who died or their mom who was mean to them, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to make an exception right now because I think this is really funny. I have been getting very, very little sleep these days. Like, very, very little. Last night, got about an hour of sleep. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, before the show, I actually feel fine. I feel pretty alert, and we're going to be talking about some pretty intense stuff today. So hopefully we'll be alert for that. Feel good. But I was looking online. What does it feel like to be on 1 hour of sleep? And I found this article that said that being on 1 hour of sleep is akin to having 3 tequila shots. So I thought, you know what? This could be a really fun episode. Take somebody who's on a low level of sleep and then have them talk about some of the most controversial topics of our day and see how that works out. It's honestly kind of like a fun thought experiment or a fun drinking game if you were playing it with drinks instead of just sleep deprivation. But, you know, it also, you know, I'm always trying to find like the takeaway or the lesson in life. And one thing I've learned from this bout of unfortunately not sleeping very well is that it doesn't mean that you should do this, but it shows you that your body can handle a lot more than you think that it can handle. And we fret a lot. I was talking the other day on the show about complaining. You know, we've been discussing the power of your thoughts, projection, your gut, catching and flipping negative thoughts, etc. And I was talking about complaining and how much of our mental energy we spend complaining and ruminating. And a lot of that for a lot of people has to do with sleep. And we fear what would happen if we got such little sleep. We know we have to get up at a certain time in the morning and we go, oh gosh, if I fall asleep now, I'm going to get 7 hours and then I'm going to be tired, or I'm only going to get 6 hours, or I'm only going to get 5 hours. Let me tell you, as someone who has been going several nights not getting a lot of sleep, it's actually okay. The thing that you fear doesn't always come to fruition. And so again, in life, I think it's kind of good to just know. Doesn't mean you should, but sometimes you can get a very little amount of sleep and it will be just fine. Sean, you've ever been through that? Sleep deprivation? 1 hour a night?
Yeah, no.
I know who hasn't.
In my life, I had tremendous problems sleeping. And then I took a sleep test and I was diagnosed with sleep apnea.
Oh, wow.
In my early 20s. And was diagnosed with severe sleep apnea. And that's where the body doesn't fully sleep. You sleep, but you could sleep 10 hours and it's not good rest, so it doesn't matter. It's better to get quality sleep. Sleep apnea, you're constantly waking up because your airway is not completely open the way it's supposed to be. So they give you a CPAP, and I think when I was 24, I used it for the first time, and it was miraculous to me to actually sleep for 8 hours and know what that feels like. The problem with not sleeping is you can do it, especially in your 20s. You can fudge it for a little while.
Yeah.
but it catches up with you because you become more tired during the day incrementally, and it's slowly. You're like the frog in the boiling pot, and you don't realize how hot the water has gotten
Yeah.
until you're out of energy during the day, and it's a vicious cycle. So you do have to try and sleep. What do you think it is? All the travel you've been doing?
Yeah, probably. A lot of people have sleep apnea. I should do some research on that. I know a lot of people who have struggled with that. It's a lot more common than people think it is. But I just thought this would be really funny to see all the controversial subjects that I can just throw out there on 1 hour of sleep and see how maybe I can stay away from getting myself into too much trouble. So let's talk about what has percolated in the past 24 hours. Of course, in this world, there's always crazy news, it seems, every single day. But it seems as though the past 24 hours, and I've been awake for 23 of them, have been particularly eventful. So let's just rattle some things off here. The UK Ministry of Defence announced that it had been hacked yesterday. And not just hacked, but severely hacked. In fact, they said 270,000 members of the UK Ministry of Defence had their payroll data leaked. And you may think, okay, so what's the big deal about having payroll data of 270,000 members leaked? Well, it includes the names, the bank details, the addresses of people who work in the UK Ministry of Defense. It's like when people talk about TikTok and the amount of information that TikTok has on the average user, people go like, oh, well, what's the big deal? They have my information. The big deal is that they have your information. Like you just think they have your username. No, our phones and these accounts, they have our credit cards linked a lot of the time. They have our addresses linked. So when someone gets into that, they have a lot of information. So the UK Defense Secretary said that there was a, quote, malign actor who they think is behind this data hack. A malign actor who engages in hacking. I have a guess. I think it's probably a pretty accurate guess. What country does that? China. You know it's China. I just saw Sean. People can't see him. Sean just went, oh. Who did you think I was thinking of?
Alec
Russia?
Baldwin.
Oh, Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
That's funny. When I saw your look of shock, I was shocked by your shock. Yeah, no, it looks like China was behind this. And as we know, we talked about this on Timeless a few weeks ago. Our own FBI director, Christopher Wray, said that China's efforts to implant malware in U.S. critical infrastructure right now is occurring, quote, at a scale greater than we'd seen. And we know that China has already hacked into U.S. government accounts. This happened about a year ago and barely got any news. This is what they do. And remarkably, the world just yawns at it as if it's not a big deal at all. So we will see just how big of a deal this becomes. And they're just going to keep doing it because they get away with it and we let them get away with it. So that was big news story number one of the past 24 hours. Israel has begun their invasion of Rafah. The IDF said that, quote, it is currently conducting targeted strikes against Hamas terror targets in eastern Rafah, and they have dropped the leaflets down. So that's another big event that happened in the past 24 hours. Columbia University canceled their main graduation ceremony, which we knew was coming. It's not exactly shocking news, but nevertheless, it's just so sad that these kids who are graduating right now, they lost their high school graduation, many of them, because of COVID. And now they're losing their college graduation because of Hamas sympathizers. And it certainly will be the case that more of those graduation ceremony cancellations will come. I remember saying a month ago, how the heck can they have graduation? Because these people just use any opportunity that they can to ruin a good moment. Did you see those videos of the Hamas supporters at the University of Michigan and at these other graduation ceremonies? And they're getting up there and they're holding the Palestine flag. And by the way, even if you totally agree with what they stand for, if you are totally gung-ho with their worldview, if you believe that there's a genocide going on, if you are totally supportive of these individuals, still, can't you recognize how sad it is that at a graduation ceremony, someone wants to use that as their moment to make a statement about politics? Just have fun at your graduation. Enjoy that you're graduating. Let other people enjoy that they're graduating. Go get a bottle of champagne and pop it open with your friends and get drunk because you graduated from college. Like, it's just so sad how brainwashed people are. And nowadays, so many view it as like their meaning in life, their vocation, to have every single moment imbued with politics. It's that whole slogan, the personal is political, or the political is personal. Yes, in some cases, but in other cases, let the personal be the personal. Doesn't all have to come back to politics. So that was, I guess, big news story number 3. And then, did you all see that there were these weird reports that the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, had an assassination attempt? Did you see that? No. You didn't see that? Okay. Well, you must live under a rock. Well, it's actually good that you didn't see it, because apparently it was false, or it was baseless. So there was a report that came out that there was a explosion near the motorcade of Mohammed bin Salman. And then on Twitter, people were saying, oh my God, this was an assassination attempt. And of course, so many people were saying that it was probably Israel or probably the United States. And then now the whole story is that that was a fake news story. You never know these days. You got to give it time. And then to add to the list of all the crazy things that are going on in our world, did you know that the Boy Scouts changed their name today? We know why they changed their name, to be more inclusive, supposedly. But they changed it to Scouting America. I gotta say, maybe this is a bit of a controversial take. I kind of like that name because it has America in it. If they're going to change the name, I don't think they should have changed the name, obviously. But if they're going to change the name to anything, might as well put America in the title. You know?
Well,
it could have been so much worse. It could have been like Neutral Scouts or just Scouts. But at least they
Neutral Scouts.
Would you put it past them to call it Neutral Scouts?
Well, they did. I mean, it was already in the name. They were the Boy Scouts of America. It was already there.
That's
so
a
now
good
they're
point.
Scouting America. And I'm a former Boy Scout. Hi.
You are? That's so cute.
I am, yeah.
Aw.
And I got my
Says
badge.
a lot about you.
I have many badges. I went camping.
Aw.
And somehow I managed to be an altar boy and a Boy Scout, and
You were
never,
an altar boy too?
Yeah, and
That's
never
so
once
cute.
was I molested. It's weird.
Wow, that is a turn that I did not see coming. Well,
I
good.
think it's interesting that I believe there's still Girl Scouts, right? The Girl Scouts haven't changed.
Oh,
their
that is
name,
interesting. I'd be curious to know if that's
right?
the case.
But Boy Scouts had to drop boys.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we'll see if girls are up next. But just look at that in the past 24 hours, you know? The international news, the domestic news. Someone is writing social media is causing the obsessive focus on politics, I think. That's absolutely right. And, you know, I've been thinking about this a lot lately with regard to this show, that as much as I enjoy talking about politics and as much as we need to talk about politics, I think a lot of people right now are really feeling the overload. And rightfully so. And I have talked with so many friends who have said to me that and these are friends who are super, super interested in the happenings of the world. I've had a lot of friends say to me lately that they just have to shut it all off. The Israel-Gaza thing, the Trump trial thing, the Palestine stuff, they just have to shut it off. I love how I'm saying that as I'm about to show some videos of the Palestine stuff, But I want you to know, the person who's writing that I think you're absolutely right, and it's something that I'm very aware of with my commentary on this show, and that's why I try to do so many topics that don't have to do with politics, because it is just at times very, very concerning. But as I often say too, the good news, if there is some good news specifically about this college stuff, is that sometimes things have to get so bad and places have to become non-functional, as is Columbia University right now, for them to actually realize that they need to make a change and have that change happen. So, knock on wood, I think we will see some changes. Maybe not the extent of changes that we need, but I think we'll see some. When is Thinker of the Month? Someone is writing. It's coming. It's coming very, very soon. It's, I think, next week. I have it on the calendar, but don't worry. Spencer Clavin will be back, and we'll be chatting about some brilliant person. Eagle Scout here. Glad to see Sean was a fellow Boy Scout. Yeah. Eagle Scout. That's nice. I don't know the differences between all of those.
Well, an Eagle Scout would be someone that completed the program. That's like saying graduate versus someone who attended college.
Good to know. The more
Eagle
you
Scout
know.
is the highest rank, and not everyone makes it.
I didn't do that when I was younger. But I feel like I want to enroll my kids in that kind of stuff. As long as it's called Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, not neutral Scouts. All right, let's look at what happened at the Met, because another thing that happened in the past 24 hours, and again, I was here for all of it to see it, was the Met Ball. And what was the theme? I'm forgetting. It was like something lost in time, or in the garden of time or something. I love looking at the fashion there. I actually thought this Met Ball was particularly classy. I really liked a lot of the people's outfits. But, of course, because as we were just saying, these pro-Palestine, I'm putting that in blinking quotation marks because many of them are pro-Hamas, demonstrators, they love to ruin fun moments. Graduations, Met Balls, just random lovely days in the United States. They just like to take a great moment and just ruin it. Here's a short video of them marching in front of the Met to protest the Met. See, like, we just have to understand this is the meaning of their lives, you know? Like, this is what makes these individuals feel important and like their life has value. But it's just like, are you kidding? Can you just stay home for one bleeping day? Do anything else. Just stay home. Eat some popcorn. Do something. My God. So that was at the Met. Here's another particularly terrible, terrible video of these individuals. I guess they were part of the Met protesting group. Who knows, honestly, what they were a part of. But there was another group, or an adjacent group, of people in this day of rage. That was what yesterday was called, the Day of Rage, with regard to the protests. This group of people went to the Upper East Side World War I memorial, and they burned the American flag in front of that memorial. Let's watch. Free, free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine. Free Palestine. Are you okay now? I did. Yeah, it's so awful. It is literally the epitome of behaving like human scum to go in front of a memorial to people who fought and died for your freedoms and then burn the American flag in front of that memorial. I mean, one of the amazing things about this country is that we protect an individual's right to burn the flag. And as terrible as it is, we allow something like that to happen. But, just more and more videos of this, and not a peep from our president condemning this. Not a peep. Because he knows that many of those individuals are in his base. And so he's not going to come out and say, don't you dare burn the flag, or how dare you burn the American flag, especially in front of this monument for all of these people who fought so that you could enjoy privileges here in the United States, and you take those privileges and you burn a flag. It's just so sick that he hasn't said anything. Someone's writing to me, the Met theme was The Garden of Time, which is a short book about how modern rule destroys culture. Yes, that's so funny. That was kind of the irony of the whole Met Ball, that there was a book about this, about kind of the elite destroying culture, and then the elite who destroys culture has to dress in the fashion of this book about elite destroying culture. Whoever came up with that has a good sense of humor. Yes.
Also, in addition to him not saying anything, I think the latest is the administration is now delaying shipments of ammunition to
Israel. Yep.
That had already been approved. So it's worse than not saying anything.
I know. And, people, I've talked with people about this who support President Biden. And I've said, does it not bother you that he hasn't come out and said anything about this flag burning? And some of the people who I've spoken to about this, they've said, well, people are allowed to burn the flag. And the answer is, of course, people are allowed to burn the flag. But still, don't you think the president of the United States should come out and say, excuse me, basically what I just said, which is, yes, you have a right to do this, but I, as the president of the United States, think this is a terrible thing. And it is terrible that so many people across the country over these past few weeks have been doing that in a kind of stand of defiance. Don't you think the president of this country ought to kind of have a moral stance on flag burning? I think so.
I think you just made me realize what bothers me most about Biden is that he puts one thing above America: votes.
That's right.
He's not going to say anything because he needs those votes.
That's right. I mean, it is so sad that we're now at a place where the president of the United States can't say that because he will not get votes. On this show, we should do this soon. I prepared this kind of cool diagram. I've talked about this before, but I sort of look at the shift in politics over the past few decades in the sense of a Venn diagram. And so 60 years ago, the Republican and the Democratic Party differed, in my view, on truly liberal and conservative things: taxes, abortion, foreign policy. But again, using the imagery of the Venn diagram, there was a core center of values that both parties subscribed to: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, respect for the rule of law, generally laissez-faire economics, a border, but most of all, patriotism and love of country. That was something that both parties, again, in decades past, generally adopted. And now it seems, and this is my whole kind of Venn diagram analogy, it seems like conservatives, in addition to defending truly conservative things, being pro-life is a obviously very conservative thing, being generally low taxes is a very conservative thing, anti-unions are very conservative things. But in addition to those, in my view, conservatives now are defending that middle portion of the Venn diagram. It's now conservative to love the United States. It's conservative to fly a flag. It's conservative to advocate for freedom of speech and to oppose criminalizing hate speech. Those just used to be core center American values. But it explains why President Biden is not condemning the easiest thing to condemn. Because nowadays, holding an American flag, flying the American flag, saying that you love America is deemed conservative. That is so wrong. There is nothing wrong with loving America. There is everything right about loving America. Everything is just so warped. Let's look at another video. These were some people who were arrested at or near the Met for their protesting.
Let him go! Let him go!
Such chaos. Look at that. Yeah, all right. The problem with playing these clips for too long is just the more you watch, the more depressing it is. But, you know, I often wonder about this moment and how it compares to the 1960s. Sean, this may come off as a weird question, but again, I'm on 1 hour of sleep and I can't do math. You were not alive in the 1960s, right?
No.
When were you born? You were born in what, the 70s or the 80s?
Yes, yeah, I was born in 75.
Okay, that will go down in history.
I missed the 60s by a little bit.
Okay, I need to consult someone who was alive in the 60s. But I think a lot about how this moment compares to the 60s, because as people are writing, and it's so true, we're living in a really hard moment. We're living in a moment where a lot of people are very discouraged because of social media and all of the news that they're seeing with videos like that. And I think it's very easy for us right now to think that things have never been this bad, or that we are in an unprecedented time. And I gotta say, I'm a little bit like 50-50 with this, because there's a part of me that really does believe that we are in an unprecedented time because of the irrationality of the moment. There's been turmoil before in the United States, but right now, like, we literally have people who think that they are furries, you know? Like, we're in that place in the United States where people think that calling a Black person articulate is a form of racism. We're at a point now where Department of Education say that finding one right answer in math is white supremacy. So yeah, in some ways, this moment is very unprecedented because of the irrationality. But in other ways, if it's sort of a comfort, I don't know, it's stuff like this did go on in the 60s. There were massive Vietnam War protests. There were people being arrested, disrupting certain events. I mean, even if you look back, I was doing some kind of going back in a time capsule and thinking about the years of the 60s. The Vietnam War was raging in the 60s. JFK was assassinated in 1963, and then LBJ stepped down, or at least he actually didn't step down. He stepped down as the nominee for the Democratic Party for president. That was a big deal. Then MLK is assassinated. RFK was assassinated. 4 years later, Richard Nixon stepped down. He resigned as the president of the United States, which happened, like one other time in presidential history, or maybe that was the first time that it ever happened. The point is, that is a lot. Can you imagine living in that decade where the president is assassinated, these two other huge cultural leaders are assassinated, and then the president resigns? People during that time must have thought, oh my gosh, it can't get worse than this. This has never happened before in the United States of America. Literally, imagine now if, God forbid, we had a president assassinated and then we had, two cultural leaders assassinated. We would be freaking out. We would think that this is crazy. But it happened in our country, and not long ago. So we do go through bad times. We have to be appropriately aware of the severity of this bad time and not just go, America will survive. It's always survived. We'll get through it. But I think it's also really important for us to remember those other bad moments and not just wallow in the despair of this one. I mean, I could go on about this, but just to say one final thing, like, can you imagine living during the time of the Civil War? Yeah, we think this stuff is bad, and it is. Graduation being canceled, people shrieking on the streets about crazy stuff. But can you literally imagine, like, going to war against the Confederacy? Against people who wanted to secede from the United States and preserve the evil of slavery? We're in a bad moment, but we're not in that bad of a moment. So let's temper ourselves, our sadness a bit and our discouragement a bit with some understanding that things have been a lot worse.
I tend to agree with you. I feel like the protests now are cheap. They're not authentic. They're not as important as they were in the 60s. I look at World War II and a generation that was drafted and had to go overseas and fight to save the world from Nazism and communism.
Can you imagine?
These 20-year-olds today couldn't do that. A good portion of them, I'm sure there's still good people in the Army today, but it's such a difference. You talk about the Civil War, like you have the luxury now of protesting.
Yes.
Because people have died in the past to protect that right. So to me, it doesn't ring true, and it doesn't have the same magnitude that it did. When we were in Vietnam, we were losing American lives, and people were protesting that. And you also had the whole movement of drugs at the same time, and all the assassinations you were talking about, and women wanted their rights. There was a whole lot going on, and I think people romanticize that era of history, and they've been trying to recreate it ever since, and we just can't reach that mark. All the protests nowadays seem contrived and less authentic than before, and less significant.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because again, as bad as things are, there's also evidence that not as many people are as radical as we may think that they are, because they get so much news attention. And so, yes, these protests may actually be in large part contrived. Like, I'll read to you here. The Daily Wire did this, profiled this poll from Generation Lab, and it was very interesting about what college students believe about these pro-Palestine. I don't call them pro-Palestine. I call them pro-Hamas protests. But they did a huge survey of college students. Get a load of this. 81%, reading from the Daily Wire, of college students say that, quote, universities definitely or probably should hold protesters accountable for destroying, vandalizing, or illegally occupying buildings. Now, that, to me, should be like nothing that we should clap at. That to me is just obvious. We shouldn't be praising those 81% of college students for being so gracious in their common sense belief that destroying property requires consequence. However, it does show you that we see all these videos, and those videos that we played, I'm sure some of them are college students, but they seem like just greater Americans, not in college. Others are saying that there are plants, like there are people who are not citizens who are participating in those. We obviously don't know without going up and getting the names and social security numbers of every one of those people. But we have this idea that there are these swaths and swaths of college students who are super, super radical. And yes, there are a large contingent of college students who are super radical. But going on with this survey, 83% of the college students surveyed in this Generation Lab say that they think that Israel has a right to exist, whereas only 17% said that they do not believe that Israel has a right to exist. 17% is not a great number, but I would imagine if you took a poll of the average social media user and you said, how many college students do you think believe that Israel has a right to exist? I bet a lot of people would not think that according to this poll, 83% of college students supported that. I'll read you one other thing, citing my source, Daily Wire. This is a direct quote because...
Ding! Julie Hartman. Not gay.
Not Claudine Gay. I cite my sources. Quote, less than 10% of students actually participated in either the protests or counter-protests. Just 8% of the 1,250 U.S. college students who took the survey said that they participated. Only 13% said the conflict was an issue that was the most important to them. This is Sean's whole theory. You say this all the time on the show, that there are all of these... We have to remember that most Americans are good, hardworking, normal Americans who aren't extreme either way and don't buy into the stuff. And maybe that is more true of college students than we are led to believe. But when we see videos like that, I just think, like, they all show so clearly what we need to do. We need to close the border, because many are saying that there are people coming in. I mean, of course, there are people coming in who are from, many, many countries. But people are saying that a lot of those individuals participating in these protests are perhaps illegal immigrants who are coming and trying to spread, confusion and chaos. I'm not going to, until I see data on that, I'm not going to confirm or deny that. It certainly is plausible. But we need to close the border. We need to end DEI. That is the biggest thing when I see these videos, because that is DEI on full display. That is get angry. That is think of yourself and your country in terms of oppressor and oppressed status. That is identify based on group identity. We have to end DEI. We have to refund the police and support law enforcement. And we need to, crucially, make America America again. Maybe that should be Donald Trump's slogan.
Mama?
Yeah, mama. Or ma'am? Is it make America... Ma'am. It's ma'am. Make America America again.
Did you see that MIT got rid of their...
I did see that. I did see that.
See, that's a positive thing.
Totally. See, that's what I'm saying. I think that there actually is some good that would come and is seeming to come out of this. But we have to ma'am America. We have to make America America again and stigmatize people who are burning the flags and people who are disrupting American events. We can allow them to do it, but I think we have to get to the place where we are relentlessly stigmatizing those kind of individuals. Yep, get CRT out of schools, people are saying. Gosh, you know how often I look at the chat and I see good points, Sean? Don't do that too much, you guys. Don't let it get to his head. Yeah. Someone's writing, yes, ma'am. We gotta ring Donald Trump and tell him that's his new slogan. Speaking of loving your country, speaking of making your country again, and clinging to a strong, robust national identity, we have to spend a few minutes looking at Eva Vlanderbroek's CPAC speech in Hungary. I know Eva. She's a good friend of mine. She is so spectacular. The thing...
Oh, wait. Make America America again is ma, not ma'am.
Okay, you're so right. Wait, yes. I told you at the beginning of the show, it's like having 3 tequila shots. I asked if you were born in the 60s and can't think of the right acronym. But you know what? Seems as though we're handling the controversial topics with some semblance of common sense, which is the only thing that really I'm hoping for. We have to look at Eva's speech, though. This is one of the most fantastic speeches I've ever seen. As I have said, Eva's a good friend of mine. I always say on Dennis and Julie that being in this conservative world for the past year and a half, 2 years, I have had the privilege and honor of meeting many, many, many prominent conservatives in the public eye. And let me tell you, I have yet to find one who is not the same off air as they are on air. Seriously. So many. Wouldn't you say that, Sean? I mean, you've been in this industry for way longer than I have. You've been here for since the 60s. You've been at this for decades. Have you ever met someone who's a prominent conservative in the public eye who is different off air than they are on air? And if the answer is yes, I would like you to proceed by spilling who the heck it is.
No, I think there's some truth to what you're saying.
We're going to get the tea out of Sean.
No, I've found a lot of genuine people on this side of the aisle.
Okay, but spill the dirt. Have you ever met someone who is off the air different than they are on the air?
Yes, but in the conservative realm, I don't know.
Oh my God.
Of course, I've met people that are different on the air than they are behind the scenes. But
I mean like one of the really like mainstream prominent conservative commentators. Oh.
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
I haven't. And I met who you're about to feature right now. And
yeah, she's so fantastic. She's so great. She is so fantastic. So this speech, I think, is one of the most important speeches delivered in our time, which sounds dramatic, but I really think it's worthy of that praise. So Eva was giving a speech at CPAC in Hungary about the migration crisis that has afflicted Europe, which we have talked about on this show. It is, I think, the biggest problem that Europe is facing right now. And I love this speech for so many reasons, of course, because of her bravery and her eloquence and her just unapologetic diagnosis of the issue. But also there's this spirit that I love of, we have to defend our country, or in her case, countries, because she was speaking to a European audience. But like, there's nothing wrong with having borders and defending your country's values. And before we get the onslaught of people who, call me and others a name, of course, people who come legally to the United States are fantastic. We are a country of immigrants. I believe we are made better because of immigrants. In fact, I prefer a lot of immigrants to the, homegrown bred Americans who have been in this country for decades and who reap the benefits of this country and totally disregard, our freedoms and fail to have any kind of gratitude for our freedoms. So I'm not anti-immigrant. It's so ridiculous. We have to go through all of these disclaimers.
That's a theory that I've had for many years.
It's so true, right?
Immigrants will save the American dream.
Yes.
We should have a trade policy where for every good, hardworking immigrant that comes over here who believes in the American values, we send one of these liberal mask-wearing, scarf-wearing people to another country. We'll do a swap.
Hey, I'm down with that. But also, and this is a very, very controversial statement, but it is the truth. And actually, someone from Denmark told me this, so I give credit to her for alerting me to this. She said, Julie, because geographically where the United States is, a lot of the immigrants that come to the United States are mostly, and this is changing, but mostly are coming from Latin American Christian countries where there is more sort of a similarity in values to American values. And this person from Denmark said to me, that is different from the situation in Europe. Geographically, Europe, because of its proximity to the Middle East, is getting a lot more immigrants from the Middle East who are not as compatible in their culture and in their values with European culture and values. And that shouldn't be a controversial statement. Both parties would agree. I have data here. This is from the Gatestone Institute, that 49% of French Muslims want Catholics to convert to Islam. 42% of French Muslims say that they place respect for Sharia law above respect for French law. And so because of the geography, there is the immigrants that a lot of countries in Europe are getting, literally, they agree about this, are culturally incompatible with the culture of Europe. speaking generally, of course. So let's look at what Eva's saying about the immigration problem. It's fantastic. Part 1.
Let me walk you through the past 7 days in Europe. This week in Stockholm, 3 elderly women in their 70s were stabbed in broad daylight on the streets. In London, 4 people were stabbed in a time span of just 42 hours. In Paris, hundreds of African migrants took to the street to riot. And in Brigalow, also in France, yet another church was burned down to the ground. Our new reality in Europe consists of frequent rapes, stabbings, killings, murders, shootings, even beheadings. But let me be clear about one thing. This did not used to happen before. This is a newly imported problem.
So I was reading a lot of the comments that Eva was getting on this speech, and many were deservedly overwhelmingly positive. But it was so interesting to see so many comments of people who were saying, oh, so you're saying all immigrants are rapists and killers and criminals, etc. Those comments are always endlessly fascinating to me, because it's like, when in that speech, and I watched the whole speech, or when in that clip, did she ever say that every single migrant who comes to Europe is a rapist or criminal or killer? She's not saying that. It's so dishonest, the people who comment that. They're not actually listening to what she is saying. By acknowledging a reality, which is that many migrants are committing these crimes, she's not saying that all migrants are committing these crimes. It's like a loop in the brain that like skips with these people. They either don't get it or they don't want to get it.
We talked about it a couple episodes, the intellectual laziness, the reactionary nature of the left. It's easier to call her a nationalist or a white supremacist than to actually listen to the facts that she brings. People
are so afraid of the truth. I know that's the most colossally obvious statement, but as I often say on Dennis and Julie, the truth is decent, you know? Like, the truth is uncomfortable, but I want to get down to what the truth is. And when people hear the truth, whether it's with regard to crime and immigration in Europe or with gender, it's amazing how you just say something that is objectively true and people have this hostile reaction to it. Again, I can't figure out if it's that literally there's like some wiring in their brain that's skipping that makes them not see this, or if it's just dishonest and they just want to smear brave people like her for being brave enough to acknowledge the reality. I don't know. Let's look at more of her video. This is where she delivers more statistics about the immigration problem in Europe.
The native, white, Christian European population is being replaced at an ever-accelerating rate. Let me back this up for you with some statistics from my home country. Let's take Amsterdam, the capital. Amsterdam currently consists of 56% migrants.
Whoa.
The Hague, 58% migrants. Rotterdam, almost 60% migrants. And of course, most of these immigrants come from non-Christian, non-Western, African and Middle Eastern countries. Conclusion, the Dutch population is already outnumbered in the majority of our cities. But let's look onwards. London, 54% migrants. Again,
whoa.
Conclusion, native population outnumbered. Brussels, color me shocked, 70% migrants. Conclusion, native population majorly outnumbered. And other Europeans will, of course, follow suit soon if they haven't already. So I'm going to draw the forbidden conclusion here. The Great Replacement theory is no longer a theory. It's reality.
I love this girl. That is so brave, and she's so right. And I love it. She's like, I'm saying the forbidden thing. This is happening. Go her. She goes on to talk about the bizarre self-sabotage that is intrinsic in a lot of this immigration or mass migration to Europe. And she specifically profiles the European Union. But it's such an interesting point because the European Union in Europe and we here in the United States, we encourage and invite all of this migration. And it's just fascinating from like a civilizational or cultural standpoint where very few times in the histories of civilization, with the exception of the Roman Empire, which is its own discussion unto itself, but very few times have civilizations been so overwhelmingly open and welcoming of mass migration to the same extent that we're seeing now. It's really, really interesting. Let's listen to her talk about it.
Imagine this in an Asian or an African country.
Facts.
Imagine their leaders rejoicing in the fact that their people will soon no longer be a majority in their own country. Absolutely unthinkable, unimaginable. So what in the world is wrong with our leaders? The underlying sentiment of what they say is always the same. Our establishment claims that white people are evil and that our history is somehow fundamentally different from that of others. Consciously or unconsciously, they have sucked up the lies and the anti-white dogmas of the neo-Marxist critical race theory.
Yes.
That's why the totalitarians in Brussels are trying to force you, the Hungarian people, a sovereign nation, to accept immigrants, despite the fact that the population has said no, and so has the government.
Again, it is amazing the amount of hate that she is getting for saying this. But it is absolutely true. I did a show here about how the United Nations is getting massive funding from American taxpayers here in the United States, which goes to these NGOs in Latin America, which is facilitating this migration to the United States. And of course, I, as many others, have a lot of sympathy for individuals who are fleeing war-torn, poverty-stricken countries, trying to seek a better life in the United States. But it is not a xenophobic or terrible thing to say, wait a minute, there's a point at which this goes too far. And especially in Europe with those statistics, I mean, the migration problem in the United States is bad enough. In Europe, it is in a whole other stratosphere. For even acknowledging that, like, wait a minute, our culture is our culture, our people are our people, we can't be outnumbered, we need to retain our country. When someone like her says that, it's like deemed the most white supremacist neo-Nazi thing that you could say. But as she so articulately put it, can you imagine another country, a non-white country? They would not get the same kind of scrutiny. Why aren't they being held to account? Why isn't Iran stigmatized for not allowing the mass migration of white Westerners? Of course, white Westerners don't want to go to Iran, but they don't get the same kind of stigma that white Western nations do. It's ridiculous. Let's hear her go on.
When another white boy or a white girl dies at the hand of an immigrant, we might shake our head, we might let out a sigh, we might even get angry for a minute or two, and then we go on with our lives. We offer the family thoughts and prayers, but nothing ever changes. Ladies and gentlemen, what does that say about us? This is a response of a society that has already given up, a society that has already accepted its defeat. But is this true? Have we given up? Do we really accept the new reality that our globalist leaders have in mind for us? I know one thing for sure. And that is that if nothing changes, if we don't start to seriously fight for our continent, for our religion, for our people, our countries, then this time that we live in will go down in history as the time in which Western nations no longer had to get invaded by hostile armies in order to be conquered, This time will then go down in history as the period in which the invader was actively invited in by a corrupt elite. And not only did this corrupt elite invite the enemy in, they made the native population pay for it too.
I'm telling you, this is like the best speech. And one of the most important speeches delivered, I believe, in the past decade. And she points to this bizarre self-flagellation that is truly unique to the West. If you say in this country that you are proud to be an American, what a lot of people would respond is, oh, well, you're proud of slavery. You're proud of Jim Crow. It's absurd. No other country, besides European countries, I'm saying no other, frankly, non-white, non-Western country gets that same kind of scrutiny. If someone says, I'm a proud Iranian, or I'm proud to be from Iran, do you ever hear people go, oh, you love the Ayatollahs? Or if someone says, I'm proud to be from Japan, I'm proud to be Japanese, do you hear people go, oh, well, you're proud of the shogun during, World War II, being basically a Nazi country 2.0? If someone says they're proud to be Chinese, do you ever hear someone coming at them saying that they support the Chinese Communist Party? It's only with regard to white Western nations that if you say that you're proud to be from that country, then it is assumed that you endorse all of the bad things that that country may have done in the past. And it is a culture literally cannot survive with that kind of self-flagellation. Absolutely, a culture needs to recognize the bad things that that country or that culture has done, as we have done over and over in the United States. But that doesn't mean that we can't be proud to be American or proud to be Dutch or proud to be German. It's such a double standard.
It's testament to how powerful the left is.
Yes.
It's not just countries. If you proudly announce
very good
that you're
point.
Catholic, you suddenly now have to defend the pedophilia priest scandal. You're not allowed to be proud of the accomplishments without accepting all the negativity of the past. But we are great because of that. It bothers me. I think going through this with you now, it's important to see they will dismiss her as supremacist. They will say
they already are
just the new version of the KKK. But this is not about racial assimilation. This is not even about religious assimilation. This is about values assimilation.
Yes.
A country can withstand
Well
immigration as long as the values are assimilated.
And that's what we were saying earlier, Sean. When I was saying that I prefer, in a lot of cases, immigrants coming to the United States than a lot of Americans in the United States. And that's not because of race. It's because of values. It's because a lot of those immigrants are far more grateful to be in the United States than most Americans are grateful to be in the United States. So it's a very, very, very good and important point. Let's hear her ending. The whole, I know I'm like just gushing about this speech. The whole speech is so good. I think this ending is spectacular.
So what's the antidote? A strong Christian Europe of sovereign nation states. That's why we need to outright reject the lie that nationalism causes war. It's not nationalism or national sovereignty that causes war. It's expansionism. And where in Europe do we find that nowadays? In one place and one place only, Brussels. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the daughters and sons of the greatest nations on earth. And we need to ask ourselves, what has happened to us? Where do we come from? And more importantly, where are we going? Our elites have declared a war on us, and now it is time for us to put on the full armor of God, fight back, and win. Thank you so much.
I love it. I absolutely love it. There is nothing wrong with loving your country. Period. End of story. God knows I love mine. All right. Got to bid you adieu, but first, or I guess but last, let's talk about my pillow. Sean's cracking up with that fantastic segue. I use a lot of MyPillow products. I sleep on a MyPillow. I sleep on the Giza Dream bed sheets. I use my towels and I wear my slippers. And you can get a lot of these discounts. You can get a lot of these discounts. You can get a lot of these products at a discount if you use the promo code Hartman. They're having a $25 extravaganza right now. You can get 2-pack multi-use MyPillows for $25, MyPillow sandals for $25, 6-pack towel sets for $25, brand new 4-pack dish towels for $25, and for the first time ever, the premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric for just $25. Orders over $75 will receive free shipping. Just go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman or call 1-800-566-6745 today and use the promo code Hartman.
Would you please go home and use your MyPillow?
I feel fine. I really do.
You do. You're doing remarkably well for not sleeping. Yeah.
No, but it shows you we can handle a lot more than we think we can. And at the risk of sounding really corny, I think that's a very important thing for us to realize generally right now. We can handle it. Let's march forward. And as Eva says, fight for our civilization. Someone is ending Victor Davis Hanson teachings on Hillsdale College. Yeah, that's a really good place to start with fighting for your civilization, getting the instruction of him. Thank you all so much for tuning in. You can email me at julie@julie-hartman.com. I love hearing from you about any subject. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Julie R. Hartman, and I will see you tomorrow right here live on this YouTube channel at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. Bye. Or as we say on D&J, shalom.